Hi there, it's Anna of Tanya and Anna's reading of Terry Pratchett's The Night Watch. This is part 3. It is rather late today because I've been putting together IKEA furniture all day. You'll probably hear more background noise than the last time because my kids are home and they can't be quiet to save their lives. And I guess that's about it. Let's get started. What you doing, Mifter? Buggy didn't budge from the telescope. A crowbar wouldn't have separated him at this point. Shut up, you daft quarterbees, he muttered. Both men below had fired, and both men had missed because they were trying to fire and dodge at the same time. Something hard prodded Buggy's shoulder. What's happening, Mifter? Said the insistent voice. He turned. There were a dozen bedraggled ravens behind him, looking like old men in ill-fitting black cloaks. They were Tower of Art birds. Hundreds of generations of living in a highly charged magical environment had raised the intelligence level of what had been bright creatures to begin with. But although the ravens were intelligent, these ones weren't hugely clever. They just had a more persistent kind of stupidity, as befitted birds for whom the exciting panorama of the city below was a kind of daytime TV. Push off, shouted Buggy, turned back to the telescope. There was Carcer running, and Vimes running after him, and here came the hail. It turned the world white. It thudded around him and made his helmet ring. Hailstones as big as his head bounced on the stone and hit Buggy from underneath. Cursing and shielding his face with his arms and hammered all the time by the shattering crystal balls, each one predicting a future of pain, he skidded and slid across the rolling ice. He reached an ivy-hung arch between two lesser turrets, where the heron had already taken refuge, and fell inside. Frozen shrapnel still ricocheted in and stung him, but at least he could see and breathe. A beak prodded him sharply in the back. What's happening now, Mifter? Carcer landed heavily on the arch between the student hall and the main buildings, almost lost his footing on the tiles, and hesitated. An arrow from a watchman below grazed his leg. Vimes dropped down behind him just as the hail hit. Cursing and slipping, one man followed the other across the arch. Carcer reached a mass of ivy that led onto the roof of the library and scrambled up it, scattering ice below. Vimes grabbed the ivy just as Carcer disappeared onto the flat roof. He looked round at a crash behind him and saw Carrot trying to make his way along the wall from the high-energy magic building. The hail was forming a halo of ice fragments around him. Stay there, Vimes bellowed. Carrot's reply was lost in the noise. Vimes waved his arms and then grabbed at the ivy as the foot slipped. Bloody stay there, he yelled. That is an order. You'll go over. He turned and started up the wet, cold vines. The wind dropped and the last few hailstones bounced off the roof. Vimes stopped a few feet from the top of the ivy, worked his feet firmly into footholds in the ancient knotted stems, and reached up for a decent hold. Then he thrust himself up, left hand ready, and caught the boot that swung towards him and carried on rising, pushing Carcer off balance. The man sprawled backwards on the slippery hail, tried to get to his feet, and slipped again. Vimes tugged himself onto the roof, stepped forward, and found his legs skidding away beneath him. Both he and Carcer got up, tried to move, and fell over again. From a prone position, the man landed a kick on Vimes' shoulder, sending both of them sliding away in opposite directions, and then turned over and scuttled on all fours across the library's big glass and metal dome. He grabbed the rusty frame, hauled himself upright, and pulled out a knife. Come and get me then, he said. There was another roll of thunder. I don't have to, said Vimes. I just have to wait. At least until I get my breath back, he thought. Why are you picking on me? What am I supposed to have done? Couple of murders ring a bell, said Vimes. If injured innocence was money, Carcer's face was his fortune. I don't know anything about... I'm not up here to play games, Carcer. Knock it off. You're going to take me alive, your grace? You know, I don't want to, but people think it's neater all round if I do. There was a clattering of tiles away on the left, and a thud as a huge siege bow was rested on the ridge of a nearby roof. The head of Detritus rose behind it. Sorry about that, Mr. Vimes. Hard to climb up in that hail. Just stand back. You're going to let it shoot me, said Carcer. He tossed the knife away. An unarmed man? Trying to escape, said Vimes, but this was starting to go bad. He could feel it. Me? I'm just standing here. And there it was, that bloody laugh on top of that damned grin. It was never far away. Ha-ha didn't come close to doing it the injustice it deserved. It was more of a modulation to the voice, an irritatingly patronizing chortle that suggested that all this was somehow funny and you hadn't got the joke. Trouble was, you couldn't shoot at someone for just having an annoying laugh, and he was just standing there. If he ran, you could shoot him. Admittedly, it would be Detritus doing the shooting, and while with that bow it was technically possible to shoot to wound, the people you were wounding would probably be in the next building over. But Carcer was just waiting there, insulting the world by his existence. In fact, he wasn't merely standing there now. In one movement, he'd swung himself onto the lower slopes of the library's dome. The glass panes, at least the glass panes that had survived the freak hail, creaked in the iron framework. "Stop right there," Vimes bellowed, "and come down." "Now where would I go?" said Carcer, grinning at him. "I'm just waiting here for you to arrest me, right? Hey, I can see your house from up here." What's under the dome, thought Vimes. How high are the bookcases? There's other floors in the library, aren't there? Like galleries? But you can definitely look up at the dome from the ground floor, right? If you were careful, you could swing on the gallery from the edge of the dome. It'd be risky, but if a man knew he was going to swing anyway... Picking his way with care, he reached the edge of the dome. Carcer climbed up a little further. "I warned you, Carcer." "Only in high spirits, Mr. Grace. Can't blame a man for trying to enjoy his last few minutes of freedom, can you?" "I can see your house from up here." Vimes hauled himself onto the dome. Carcer cheered. "Well done, your Vimes," he said, easing himself toward the top. "Don't mess me about, Carcer. It'll go badly for you." "Better than what's going to go anyway?" Carcer glanced down through a smashed pane. "Long way down, Mr. Vimes. I reckon a man'd die instantly falling all that way, wouldn't he?" Vimes glanced down, and Carcer leapt. It didn't go the way he'd planned. Vimes had been tensed for something like this. After a complicated moment, Carcer was lying on the iron latticework, one arm under him, the other outflung and being banged heavily on the metal by Vimes. The knife it had held had skidded away down the dome. "Gods, you must think I'm stupid," Vimes growled. "You wouldn't throw away a knife, Carcer, if you didn't have another one." Vimes's face was close to the man's now, close enough to look into the eyes above that chirpy grin and watch the demons waving. "You're hurting me, and that's not allowed." "Oh, I wouldn't want to see anything happen to you, Carcer," said Vimes. "I want to see you in front of his lordship. I just want to hear you admit something for once. I just want to see that bloody cheeky grin wiped off your face. Sergeant Detritus!" "Sir!" shouted the troll from his distant ridge. "Make a signal. I want people up here now. Me and Carcer are just going to stay nice and quiet here so as he doesn't try any tricks." "Right, sir." With another distant clatter of doomed tiles, the troll disappeared from view. "You shouldn't have sent Captain Carrot away," muttered Carcer. "He doesn't like watchmen bullying innocent civilians." "It is true that he has yet to master some of the finer details of de facto street policing," said Vimes, maintaining his grip. "Anyway, I'm not hurting you. I'm protecting you. Wouldn't like you to fall all that way." Thunder rumbled again. The sky wasn't just storm black now. There were pinks and purples in the clouds, as though they were bruised. Vimes could see the clouds moving like snakes in a sack, to an endless sullen rumbling. He wondered if the wizards had been messing about with the weather. Something was happening to the air. It tasted of burned metal and flints. A weathercock on top of the dome began to spin round and round. "I didn't think you was stupid, Mr. Vimes." "What?" said Vimes, looking down suddenly. Carcer was smiling cheerfully. "I said I didn't think you was stupid, Mr. Vimes. I know a clever copper like you would think I got 2 knives." "Yeah, right," said Vimes. He could feel his hair trying to stand up on end. Little blue caterpillars of light were crackling over the ironwork of the dome, and even over his armor. "Mr. Vimes?" "What?" Vimes snapped. Smoke was rising from the weathercock's bearings. "I got 3 knives, Mr. Vimes," said Carcer, bringing his arm up. The lightning struck. Windows blew out and iron gutters melted. Roofs lifted into the air and settled again. Buildings shook. But this storm had been blowing in from far across the plains, pushing the natural background magic ahead of it. It dumped it now all in one go. They said afterwards that the bolt of lightning hit a clockmaker's shop in the street of Cunning Artificers, stopping all the clocks at that instant. But that was nothing. In Baker Street, a couple who had never met before became electrically attracted to one another and were forced to get married after 2 days for the sake of public decency. In the Assassin's Guild, the chief armorer became hugely, and since he was in the armory at the time, tragically attractive to metal. Eggs fried in their baskets, apples roasted on the greengrocer's shelves, candles lit themselves, cartwheels exploded. And the ornate tin bath of the Arch-Chancellor of Unseen University was lifted neatly off the floor, sizzled across his study, and then flew off the balcony and onto the lawn and into the octangle several stories below, without spilling more than a cupful of suds. Arch-Chancellor Mustrum Ridcully paused with his long-handled scrubbing brush hovering halfway down his back and stared around. Tiles smashed to the ground, water boiled in the ornamental fountain nearby. Ridcully ducked as a stuffed badger, the origin of which was never ascertained, flew across the lawn and smashed through a window. He winced as he was hit by a brief and inexplicable shower of small cogwheels, which pattered down all around him. He stared as a half-dozen watchmen dashed into the octangle and headed up the stairs to the library. Then, gripping the sides of the bath, the Arch-Chancellor stood up. Foam water cascaded off of him, as it would off some ancient leviathan erupting from the abyssal sea. "Mr. Stibbins," he bellowed, his voice bouncing off the imposing walls. "Where the is my hat?" He sat down again and waited. There were a few minutes of silence, and then Ponder Stibbins, head of inadvisably applied magic and praelector of Unseen University, came running out of the main door carrying Ridcully's pointy hat. The Arch-Chancellor snatched at it and rammed it on his head. "Very well," he said, standing up again. "Now will care to tell at the is going on, and why old Tom ing repeatedly? Been of magic, sir. Someone up the mechanisms," Ponder shouted above the sound-destroying silences. Footnote. Old Tom, the university's venerable clock, told not sounds but silences. They were not simply ordinary silences, but intervals of noise-absorbing non-sound that filled the world with a loud soundlessness. There was a dying metallic noise from the big clock tower. Ponder and Ridcully waited a few moments, but the city stayed full of normal noise, like the collapse of masonry and distant screams. "Right," said Ridcully, as if grudgingly awarding the world a mark for trying. "What was that all about, Stibbins? And why are there policemen in the library?" "Big magical storm, sir. Several thousand gigathons. I believe the watch is chasing a criminal." "Well, they can't just run in here without asking," said Ridcully, stepping out of the bath and starting forward. "What do we pay our taxes for, after all?" We don't actually pay taxes, sir," said Ponder, running after him. "The system is that we promise to pay taxes if the city ever asks us to, provided the city promises never to ask us, sir. We make a voluntary—" "Well, at least we have an arrangement, Stibbins." "Yes, sir. May I point out that you—" "And that means they have to ask permission. The essential decency must be maintained," said Ridcully firmly, "and I am the master of this college." "On the subject of decency, sir, you are not in fact wearing—" Ridcully strode through the open doors of the library. "What is going on here?" he demanded. The watchman turned and stared. A large blob of foam, which up until that point had been performing sterling service in the cause of essential decencies, slipped slowly to the floor. "Well," he snapped, "haven't you lot seen a wizard before?" A watchman snapped to attention and saluted. "Captain Carrot, sir. We've never seen so much of a wizard, sir." Ridcully gave him the slow blank stare used by those with acute uptake grasping deficiency. "What's he talking about, Stibbins?" he said out of the corner of his mouth. "You're insufficiently dressed, sir." "What? I've got my hat on, haven't I?" "Yes, sir." "Hat equals wizard, wizard equals hat. Everything else is frippery. Anyway, I'm sure we're all men of the world," Ridcully added, looking round. For the first time he took in other details about the watchman. "And dwarves of the world, and trolls of the world too, and I see, and women of the world too, I note. The Arch-Chancellor lapsed into a moment's silence and then said, "Mr. Stibbins?" "Yes, sir." "Would you be so kind as to run up to my rooms and fetch my robe?" "Of course, sir." "And in the meantime, please be so good as to lend me your hat." "But you do actually have your hat on, sir," said Ponder. Quite so, said Ridcully, slowly and carefully through a fixed grin. "And now, Mr. Stibbins, in addition, right now, I wish you, in fact, to lend to me your hat, please." "Oh," said Ponder. Yes." A few minutes later, a thoroughly clean and decent and clothed Arch-Chancellor was standing in the very center of the library, staring up at the damaged dome, while beside him Ponder Stibbins, who for some reason had elected to continue to remain hatless, even though his hat had been handed back to him, stared glumly at some magical instruments. "Nothing at all," said Ridcully. "Ook," said the librarian. Footnote. Who was an orangutan, changed from his former human shape as a result of a long-forgotten magical accident. It was so forgotten, in fact, that now people were forgetting he was an orangutan. It might seem quite hard to do, given that even a small orangutan is quite capable of filling all immediate available space, but to the wizards and most of the citizens he was now just the librarian, and that was that. In fact, if someone ever reported that there was an orangutan in the library, the wizards would probably go and ask the librarian if he'd seen it. "You've searched everywhere?" "He can't search everywhere in this library, sir," said Ponder. "That would take more time than could actually possibly exist. But all the mundane shelves, certainly." Carrot turned to Ponder. "What was the for, please, sir?" "You understand that this is a magical library, and that means that even in normal circumstances, there is an area of high magical potential above the bookshelves." "I have been here before," said Carrot. "Then you know that time with libraries is somewhat more flexible," said Ponder. "Given the additional power of the storm, it might just be possible that—" "Are you going to tell me that he's been moved in time?" said the watchman. Ponder was impressed. He hadn't been brought up to believe that watchmen were clever. However, he took care not to show it. "Would that it were that simple," he said. "However, the lightning appears to have added a random lateral component." "What?" said Ridcully. "You mean time and space," said Carrot. Ponder felt himself getting rattled. Non-wizards shouldn't be that quick. "Not exactly," he said, and gave up. "I'm really going to have to work on this, Arch-Chancellor. Some of the readings I'm getting can't possibly be real." And that's where I'll leave you today. Sorry that it was late, and I'll see you in 2 days. Okay, bye.